On a tropical island in the Indian Ocean, there lived a ruler whose name became synonymous with fear and cruelty. Her reign, marked by bloodshed and terror, overshadowed even the darkest tyrants in history. This ruler, Ranavalona, turned her land of Madagascar into a nightmare and drastically reduced its population during her reign. In 1828, a dark ritual took place at the royal palace of Antananarivo. A determined woman, 46 years old, knelt as the blood of sacrificed bull was poured over her. Ancient priests chanted prayers, sealing the beginning of what would become known as the Years of Darkness. Ranavalona, as she was now called, had just claimed the throne of Madagascar after the mysterious death of her husband, King Ranavalona II. Her rise to power was no accident. Born in 1788 as a commoner named Ramavo, she caught the attention of the king after her father exposed an assassination plot. In gratitude, the king adopted her and arranged her marriage to his son, Radama. However, this marriage was far from happy. Radama had multiple wives, and Ramavo was never his favorite. Worse, he had executed several of her relatives, planting the seeds of deep resentment that would one day lead to her bloody revenge. Radama too was a progressive ruler, opening Madagascar to Western influence. He encouraged education, welcomed Christian missionaries, and formed ties with Britain. But these changes angered traditionalists at court, including Ramavo, who secretly built alliances with military and religious leaders. When Radama died, his nephew Rakoto was supposed to take the throne, but Ramavo acted swiftly. Before news of the king's death became public, she seized the palace with her loyal soldiers and declared herself queen. She gave those loyal to the old royal line an ultimatum: submit to her rule or die. Within hours, she had eliminated all opposition, and few royals survived the bloodshed. Once in power, Ranavalona began her reign of terror. She despised foreigners and their ideas, preferring to isolate Madagascar and preserve its ancient customs. In 1835, after surviving a mysterious illness, she credited her recovery to Madagascar's sacred talismans and took this as a sign to rid the country of foreign influence. She issued a decree banning Christianity under threat of death, and the persecution of Christians began. Many were hunted down, tortured, and executed in brutal ways. Some were thrown off cliffs, others boiled alive or crucified. In 1836, 14 Christians were executed in one day, and missionaries were faced with a terrible decision: flee and abandon their followers or stay and risk death. Many fled, which Ranavalona mocked, saying their foreign gods had no power in her land. One of the most feared punishments she imposed was the tanga ordeal. Suspects were forced to drink poison and eat chicken skin. If they vomited, they were considered innocent. If not, they died in agony. Thousands died this way each year, and even the dead were subjected to the tanga test, as their bodies couldn't vomit, proving their guilt. This ritual became a tool of mass terror during her reign. Ranavalona's cruelty wasn't limited to her own people. When France attempted to invade in 1849, her army not only repelled the invaders, but also captured 21 French soldiers, beheading them and displaying their heads as a warning. This victory further fueled her belief in her own divine power. As her reign continued, Ranavalona became more erratic. She implemented forced labor for her people in place of taxes. Many were drafted to work on endless projects or forced into military service, with no pay, no food, and no shelter. Pregnant women were forced to work until they gave birth, often without assistance, and death became common among the workers. One of the most infamous projects was the construction of her summer palace in the mountains, which cost the lives of around 10,000 workers. When informed of the death toll, Ranavalona allegedly said, "Stone and lime mix better with blood. The palace will last longer." She visited the palace only a few times before deciding the weather was too harsh. Her soldiers regularly crushed rebellions, burning villages and enslaving survivors. The atrocities were endless, and executions were carried out for the smallest offenses, often on mere suspicion. For example, a bad dream could lead to dozens of deaths. Ranavalona's paranoia grew as she aged. She believed the clouds themselves were trying to cast spells against her. Her subjects were forced to report anything strange in the sky, and many were executed for allegedly collaborating with sorcerers. She even banned the color purple, ordering the destruction of purple clothing, feathers, and flowers. Despite rejecting Western politics and religion, Ranavalona's reign of terror left a deep scar on Madagascar's history, turning what once in a paradise into a place of suffering and fear. Ranavalona had an unusual fascination with European culture, especially French customs. She kept a broken piano in her palace and forced her courtiers to wear French-style clothes. Her obsession extended to soap, a luxury she learned how to make from missionaries. Despite banning Christianity, she kept public baths. Though she rejected most foreign ideas, she did keep a small group of Europeans at court, mainly artisans. The most notable was Jean Laber, a French engineer who was shipwrecked in 1832. Instead of executing him, she made him her industrial advisor, and under his guidance, factories for weapons, textiles, and ammunition were built. Ranavalona's reign devastated Madagascar's economy. By cutting off trade with Europe, she turned to the slave trade. War captives were sold abroad, and when that wasn't enough, even her own people, the Merina villagers, were enslaved. Families were torn apart, and many died in horrific conditions during transport to the Middle East. Her son, Prince Rakoto, later known as Radama II, was influenced by French ideas. Unlike his mother, he opposed her cruelty and was beloved by the people. He often intervened to save condemned individuals or stop the horrific Tanga rituals. His actions angered his mother, who saw him as weak. To toughen him up, she forced him to witness executions. If he looked away, she mocked him publicly. In the 1850s, a French businessman named Joseph Francis Lamb came to Madagascar and helped suppress a local rebellion. He met with the Queen and formed a bond with Prince Rakoto. Together, they created a plan known as the Lamb Charter, which promised Lamb resource rights in exchange for support in toppling Ranavalona. France later used this agreement as a pretext to colonize Madagascar. When the plot failed, Ranavalona responded with even more intense persecution of Christians and foreigners, reaffirming her belief that they were a threat to her rule. She did not, however, kill her son, perhaps because he was her only heir. Instead, she kept him imprisoned, closely watched by her guards. This might have been an act of mercy, or perhaps she feared the consequences of killing him. In her final years, Ranavalona's cruelty reached new extremes. Servants were executed for trivial mistakes, such as dropping a tray, while others were buried alive or forced to run for their lives in death races, where soldiers chased them with spears. Only a few ever reached safety. Her obsession with death grew more macabre. She even ordered a rhinoceros hunt, even though no rhinos lived on Madagascar. When told there were no rhinos, she had the messengers executed and sent hunters out anyway. Hundreds died searching for a creature that didn't exist. Her madness reached its peak when she ordered the bodies of the dead to be exhumed and forced into labor. Soldiers tied these decomposing bodies to posts to simulate work, and the stench of decay poisoned whole villages. In August 1861, Ranavalona died at the age of 73, bringing relief to her people. Her death was marked by a strange silence in the streets, as the people were unsure if it was safe to celebrate. When the news spread, however, quiet celebrations began. It is said that she refused last rites, screaming that demons were coming for her, and her final words were, "They come with chains of fire. 1,000 souls scream my name." She died with face frozen in terror. Her funeral was not a tribute, but a desperate effort to keep her spirit from returning. Priests performed rituals and buried her with amulets, not to protect her body, but to trap her soul. Her son Radama, too, reversed many of her policies after she died. He reopened the country, allowed religious freedom, and sought diplomatic ties. However, his reforms angered conservative factions, and just 18 months after he took the throne, he was strangled in a coup. His mother's brutal culture of violence had become deeply ingrained in Madagascar. Ranavalona's legacy is a complex one. Some view her isolationist policies as a form of early nationalism, as they briefly kept Madagascar free from colonial rule. But the human cost was unimaginable. Over 33 years, she cut the population in half, shattered the economy, and left a nation scarred. Villages disappeared, bloodlines were lost, and traditions were twisted to serve her ego. Her reign slowed modernization, and the weakened economy left Madagascar vulnerable to French colonization in 1896, the very fate she had fought so hard to avoid. Even today, in Madagascar, her name is whispered with dread. Stories of the Bloody Queen are passed down to frightened children, and offerings are made not in her honor, but to appease her spirit. Like many tyrants, Ranavalona sought immortality through fear, and in a twisted way, she achieved it. Her name still chills the spine, and unlike conquerors remembered for their glory, she is remembered for her systematic destruction of her own people and culture. Her legacy lives on in the horrors she left behind, not just in the lives she took, but in the generations that were never born because of her actions. Entire generations were erased, and in the dark chapter of history's most brutal rulers, Ranavalona stand apart. Her cruelty was so complete and relentless that it defies comprehension. She didn't just turn paradise into hell. She created a new kind of hell, a monument to depravity that continues to haunt the human imagination. Ranavalona's reign is a chilling reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the depths of human cruelty. Her thirst for control led to the destruction of countless lives, turning Madagascar into a land of fear and suffering. Though she briefly kept colonial forces at bay, the cost was catastrophic, leaving a nation broken and scarred. Her legacy serves as a haunting lesson in the destructive consequences of tyranny, where fear becomes a tool of control and humanity is lost in pursuit of absolute power. Even now, the memory of her cruelty lingers, reminding us of the fragility of freedom and the enduring impact of brutal leadership.